Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra's Pride, watching the stars through the large viewing window. The ship had been traveling for 3 months, exploring new areas of space that humans had never seen before. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been flying ships for 20 years and had seen many strange things in space. "Captain, we're getting something on our sensors," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. She was a ship's science officer, a smart woman who knew more about space than anyone else on the crew. Her voice sounded worried. Jake walked over to look at her screen. What he saw made his heart beat faster. Hundreds of ships were moving toward them, ships that were much bigger than anything humans had ever built. The ships were dark blue and shaped like triangles, with lights that glowed purple along their sides. "How many ships are there?" Jake asked. "Over 5,000, Captain," Amy said. "They're all heading straight for us." Jake felt his mouth go dry. 5,000 ships was more than the entire human fleet combined. He had never seen anything like it. The alien ships were beautiful, but scary at the same time. They moved together like birds in a flock, perfectly organized. "Sir, they're trying to talk to us," said Communications Officer Steve Parker. He was a young man with red hair who was very good with computers and radio signals. "Put them on the main screen," Jake ordered. The viewing window changed to show the face of an alien creature. It had blue skin that looked like it was covered in small scales. Its eyes were yellow and very large, and it had no hair on its head. When it spoke, its voice was deep and sounded like it was used to giving orders. "Primitive species of Sol 3, the alien said. "I am Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. You have traveled beyond the boundaries that we allow for your kind." Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Federation. We're explorers, and this is open space. We have the right to be here." The alien's yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Rights? You speak of rights? The Zephyrian Empire has ruled this part of the galaxy for 3,000 of your years. We have conquered over 400 species. Every world within 200 light years of your home planet now belongs to us." "We don't recognize your claim," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "These are human colonies you're talking about. We won't abandon them." Admiral Vextar made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was cold and mean. "Little humans, you do not understand. We are not asking you to leave. We are telling you, you have one of your years to remove all humans from every world except your home planet. Take your people and return to Sol 3. Stay there. And if we refuse," Jake asked, even though he was afraid of the answer, "then you will be destroyed," the alien said simply. "Every human ship, every human colony, every human life will be ended. We have done this many times before. Species that refuse to obey us do not survive." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. These aliens thought they could just order humans around like pets. They thought humans would run away scared just because their ships were bigger. But they didn't know humans very well. "Let me make something clear," Jake said, stepping closer to the screen. "Humans don't run from fights. We don't abandon our homes because someone threatens us. Your empire may have scared other species, but we're not them." Admiral Vextar's face showed surprise. In 3,000 years, no species had ever refused the Empire's orders. They all surrendered immediately when they saw the size of the Zephyrian fleet. This small human ship should have been begging for mercy. "You are making a mistake that will cost your entire species their lives," the Admiral said. "We offer you mercy because you are young and foolish. Accept our generosity." "Here's our answer," Jake said. He reached over and pressed a button that cut off the communication. The alien's face disappeared from the screen. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Everyone was thinking about what had just happened. They had just made enemies of the most powerful empire in the galaxy, an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds and never lost a war. "Captain," said Amy Foster quietly, "their sensors show energy weapons we've never seen before. Their ships have shields that could probably stop anything we can shoot at them, and there are so many of them." Jake nodded. He knew she was right. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned. Any smart military leader would try to negotiate or find a way to avoid a fight. But Jake had been a soldier before he became a ship captain. He had fought in the Mars colonial wars against rebels who also had better weapons and more men. He had learned that sometimes a side that refuses to give up can win against impossible odds. "Steve, send a message to Earth immediately," Jake ordered. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them the aliens gave us 1 year, and tell them we said no." "Yes, sir," Steve said, his fingers flying over his controls. "Amy, I want you to scan those alien ships and record everything you can. Every detail might be important later." "Already doing it, Captain," she replied. Jake looked out at the alien fleet. The ships were just sitting there, waiting. Admiral Vextar was probably trying to understand why the humans had refused to surrender. In his experience, showing overwhelming force always made enemies give up immediately. But the Admiral didn't understand humans. Humans had a long history of fighting against impossible odds. They had fought wars where they were outnumbered 10-1 and still found ways to win. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and disasters that should have killed them all. When someone told humans they couldn't do something, it just made them more determined to prove that person wrong. "Captain," Amy said, "the alien ships are moving away. They're leaving the system." Jake wasn't surprised. The aliens probably thought they had delivered their message, and now the humans would spend a year getting ready to surrender. They would return in 12 months, expecting to find empty human colonies and humans begging for forgiveness. They were going to get a very big surprise. "Set course for Earth," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." The Terra's Pride turned toward home, carrying news that would change everything. Behind them, the last of the alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, confident that they would never have to fight the humans. After all, no species had ever been foolish enough to fight the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Vextar was about to learn that humans were different from every other species in the galaxy. The news from Captain Morrison's ship reached Earth 3 days later. President Lisa Carter was in her office in Washington when the emergency message arrived. She was a strong woman who had led Earth through many difficult times, but this was different from anything she had ever faced before. "Madam President," said her aide, "you need to see this immediately." Lisa watched the recording of the alien admiral's threat. When it finished, she sat quietly for a long moment. Then she pressed a button that would call an emergency meeting of the Earth Defense Council. 2 hours later, the most important people on Earth were sitting around a large table. General Ryan Brooks was there, a big man with a serious face who commanded all of Earth's military forces. Dr. Amy Foster had flown in from the Mars Research Station. She was the smartest person anyone knew when it came to alien technology. Commander Steve Parker was there too, along with leaders from every human colony in space. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Carter said, "we have less than 1 year before the most powerful empire in the galaxy comes to destroy us. I want options, and I want them now." General Brooks spoke first. "Madam President, I've run the numbers. They have 5,000 ships. We have maybe 300 that could fight in a real battle. Their weapons are more advanced than ours. Their ships are bigger and stronger. In a straight fight, we would lose badly. So we surrender?" asked Dr. Foster. "Never," said the president firmly. "That's not who we are. We've never surrendered to anyone, and we're not starting now." Dr. Foster smiled. She had hoped the president would say that. "Then we need to be smart about this. I've been studying the sensor data from Captain Morrison's encounter. These aliens may be advanced, but they're not magic. Their ships follow the same laws of physics that ours do." She activated a holographic display that showed the alien ships. "Look at their formation. Perfect lines, everything organized exactly the same way. That tells us something important about how they think. They like order and predictability." Commander Parker leaned forward. "What are you thinking, Doctor?" "I'm thinking that an empire that has won every war for 3,000 years has probably gotten lazy. They expect every enemy to fight the same way. They've never faced an opponent who refused to follow the rules." General Brooks nodded slowly. "Humans have never been good at following rules, especially in a fight." President Carter stood up. "Then that's our strategy. We don't fight them the way they expect. Dr. Foster, I want you to lead a research team, study their technology, and find weaknesses. General Brooks, start converting every ship we have into something that can fight. Commander Parker, begin training our pilots in new tactics. Over the next few months, Earth became like a giant factory. Every shipyard was working day and night to build new vessels or convert old ones into warships. The cargo ship that used to carry supplies to Mars was now loaded with missiles. The passenger liner that took tourists to Jupiter's moons was fitted with armor and guns. Dr. Foster made an important discovery while studying the alien sensor readings. Their shields are very strong against energy weapons like lasers, she explained to the research team. But they might not be as good against old-fashioned kinetic weapons, things that just hit them really hard. This led to a new idea. Human ships began carrying huge chunks of metal that could be fired at high speed. The military also started loading ships with nuclear warheads, not to shoot at the aliens, but to ram into them and explode. Captain Betty Williams was put in charge of intelligence gathering. She was a clever woman who was good at figuring out what enemies were thinking. Her job was to intercept alien communications and learn as much as possible about their plans. The aliens are calling us the Sol 3 incident, she reported to President Carter. They're treating this like a minor problem that will be solved quickly. Admiral Vextar has been given extra ships, but they still think we'll surrender when we see their full fleet. Meanwhile, in space, something unexpected was happening. Other alien species that had been conquered by the Zephyrians were starting to pay attention to the humans. For 3,000 years, no one had ever said no to the Empire. Now these small creatures from a primitive world were refusing to obey. Secret messages began reaching Earth from across the galaxy. The Krillians, who looked like giant insects, sent coordinates for hidden supply bases. The Delphinians, who lived underwater on ocean worlds, shared information about Zephyrian patrol routes. The Vorthans, made of living crystal, transmitted technical data about Empire weapons. Dr. Foster was amazed by what they were learning. The Empire's technology isn't originally theirs, she told President Carter. They conquered all these different species and took their best inventions. The Zephyrians themselves aren't particularly creative. They just steal good ideas from others. This gave the humans new hope. If the aliens weren't the super-intelligent creatures they pretended to be, then maybe they could be beaten after all. General Brooks was having similar thoughts as he watched human pilots train for the coming war. These alien admirals have probably never fought an enemy that didn't give up after the first battle, he said to his staff. They don't know what to do with an opponent who keeps fighting even when they're losing. The training was intense. Human pilots learned to fly in ways that would confuse the aliens. Instead of neat formations, they practiced swarming attacks where hundreds of small ships would attack from all directions at once. They learned to use asteroids and space debris as weapons. Most importantly, they learned that sometimes the best strategy was to sacrifice your own ship to damage the enemy. Captain Danny Clark was chosen to lead the most dangerous mission of all. His job was to take a small, fast ship and sneak into alien space to gather more intelligence. His ship, the Shadow Runner, was painted black and equipped with the best stealth technology Earth had ever built. Remember, General Brooks told him before he left, your job is to watch and learn, not to fight. We need to know how they organize their fleets and what their battle plans look like. As the months passed, Earth's preparations grew more ambitious. Entire asteroids were hollowed out and turned into hidden weapons platforms. Old space stations were converted into fortress-like bases. Even civilian ships were given emergency military equipment. The most important change, though, was in the people themselves. Humans from every colony, every nation, and every walk of life came together with a single purpose. They were going to show this galactic empire that Earth's children were not easy prey. Dr. Helen Cross, working with a team of the best engineers in human space, made a breakthrough that would change everything. While studying captured alien technology from old crash sites, she discovered something incredible about their power systems. The quantum reactors that power their ships have a weakness, she announced excitedly. If you hit them with a specific frequency of sound waves, the reaction becomes unstable. The whole thing could explode. The problem was finding a way to generate those sound waves in space, where there's no air to carry sound. But humans were good at solving impossible problems. They always had been. As Earth's year of preparation came to an end, President Carter looked out at the fleet that had been assembled. It wasn't as big as the alien fleet, and the ships weren't as advanced, but there was something special about it. These ships were crewed by people who refused to give up. People would rather die fighting than live as slaves. Admiral Vextar thinks he's coming to accept our surrender, she said to General Brooks. He's about to learn that humans don't know how to surrender. 1 year later, the alien fleet returned to human space. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, feeling confident about the day ahead. His fleet now had 10,000 ships instead of 5,000. The Emperor had given him extra forces to make sure the humans understood the futility of resistance. "Admiral," said his communications officer, "we are approaching the human colony of New Denver. Shall I broadcast the surrender terms?" "Yes," Vextar replied, "but keep it simple. These creatures have had a full year to think about our power. They should be ready to beg for mercy by now." The first target was New Denver, a mining colony on the edge of human space. It was defended by Colonel Jack Reed, a tough soldier who had volunteered for this assignment. Jack knew he was probably to die today, but he also knew that every minute he could delay the aliens might save lives elsewhere. When the Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace, Jack was ready for them. His small force of 30 ships looked pathetic compared to 1,000 alien vessels approaching the colony, but appearances could be deceiving. Admiral Vextar opened communications with the colony. His image appeared on screens throughout the human fleet and on New Denver itself. "Humans of New Denver," he announced, "I am Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your year of grace has ended. Surrender now and you will be relocated to your home world. Resist and you will be destroyed." Colonel Reed's face appeared on the alien admiral's screen. He was a man in his 50s with a gray beard and scars on his face from old battles. When he spoke, his voice was calm but determined. "This is Colonel Jack Reed, commanding New Denver Defense Forces. We've heard your offer, and our answer is the same as it was a year ago. No." Admiral Vextar blinked his large yellow eyes. He had expected immediate surrender once the humans saw the size of his fleet. This was not how conquests were supposed to work. "Colonel Reed," he said, trying to sound reasonable, "you have 30 ships. I have 1,000. This is not a battle you can win." Jack smiled grimly. "Maybe not, but we're going to try anyway." The battle began badly for the humans, just as everyone expected. The alien ships fired their plasma weapons, and several human vessels exploded immediately. The Zephyrian shields easily blocked the humans' return fire. It looked like the fight would be over in minutes. But then something happened that Admiral Vextar had never seen before. Instead of retreating or surrendering, the human ships did something completely unexpected. They charged straight at the alien fleet, ignoring the weapons fire that was destroying them. Lieutenant Sarah Murphy was piloting a converted cargo ship called the Denver's Hope. Her ship was loaded with nuclear warheads and had no real weapons of its own. As plasma bolts struck her hull and systems failed around her, she kept flying straight toward the alien flagship. "Sarah, your ship is falling apart." Colonel Reed shouted over the radio. "I know, sir," she replied, "but I'm almost there." Admiral Vextar watched in shock as the human cargo ship smashed through his flagship shields. The shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not a massive chunk of metal traveling at high speed. Sarah's ship struck the Eternal Dominion and exploded, taking a huge section of the alien vessel with it. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Zephyrian admiral had been killed in battle. Admiral Vextar died in the explosion, along with hundreds of his crew. The effect on the alien fleet was immediate. They had never lost a flagship before. They had never seen an enemy willing to die just to damage one of their ships. The neat formation of alien vessels began to break apart as individual captains tried to avoid the ramming attacks. Colonel Reed saw his opportunity. All ships, swarm pattern Delta, hit them from every direction at once. The remaining human ships scattered and attacked from all angles. They used tactics the aliens had never encountered. ships diving out of asteroid fields, weapons platforms that have been disguised as space debris, and coordinated attacks that focused all their firepower on single targets. The aliens had superior technology, but they didn't know how to fight an enemy that refused to follow normal battle rules. Their weapons were designed to fight other advanced civilizations that used energy shields and long-range combat. They were not prepared for humans who fought like ancient warriors, willing to die to take their enemies with them. Captain Mike Taylor commanded a group of converted mining ships. These vessels had been used to break apart asteroids, so they were built to ram into things without being destroyed. Mike led his ships in a direct assault on the alien battle line. "Remember," he told his pilots, "we're not trying to win a clean victory here. We're trying to hurt them bad enough that they think twice about fighting humans." His ship struck the alien formation like a hammer. Several Zephyrian vessels were damaged or destroyed, but the cost was heavy. Most of Mike's ships were lost in the attack. The battle lasted for 6 hours, much longer than any Zephyrian conquest in recorded history. When it finally ended, both fleets had suffered terrible losses. 2/3 of the human ships were gone, but they had destroyed over 200 alien vessels and damaged many more. Most importantly, they had done something no other species had ever managed. They had made the Zephyrian Empire bleed. As the surviving alien ships regrouped, their new commander, Admiral Corvex, tried to understand what had happened. His species had conquered 400 worlds without ever losing more than a handful of ships. Now they had lost hundreds in a single battle against a primitive species. "Sir," said his tactical officer, "the humans fought like they were insane. They kept attacking even when their ships were destroyed. They used their own vessels as weapons." Admiral Corvex studied the battle recordings. What he saw disturbed him. The humans had shown no fear, no hesitation, no desire to preserve their own lives when they could damage the enemy instead. This was completely outside the Zephyrian understanding of warfare. "Send a message to the Emperor," he ordered. "Tell him that the humans are not like other species we have conquered. They do not surrender when faced with superior force. Recommend that we commit the entire Imperial Navy to this campaign." Meanwhile, Colonel Jack Reed was sending his own message to Earth. His ship was damaged and most of his fleet was gone, but he was alive and his colony was still free. "Mission accomplished," he reported to General Brooks. "The aliens know now that humans don't give up. They lost their admiral and a lot of ships, but they'll be back with more forces. Lots more." The news of the battle spread across human space like wildfire. Humans everywhere celebrated the fact that their military had bloodied the nose of the galaxy's most powerful empire. But the celebration was mixed with grim determination. Everyone knew this was just the beginning. More importantly, the news spread beyond human space. On hundreds of conquered worlds, alien species that had been enslaved for centuries heard about the Battle of New Denver. For the first time in thousands of years, someone had proven that the Zephyrian Empire could be hurt. Secret messages began flooding into human space from across the galaxy. The Krillian hive mind sent tactical information about Zephyrian ship designs. The aquatic Delphinians shared locations of Imperial supply depots. The crystalline Vorthans transmitted data about Imperial troop movements. Dr. Foster, studying these communications on Earth, realized what was happening. "The whole galaxy is watching us," she told President Carter. "Every species that was ever conquered by the Empire is hoping we can do what they couldn't, prove that the Zephyrians can be beaten." President Carter nodded grimly. "Then we better not let them down." Emperor Koldun was not pleased. He sat on his crystal throne on the capital world of Nexus Prime, reading reports about the human resistance. For 3,000 years, no species had ever killed a Zephyrian admiral. Now, these primitive creatures from a backwater planet had destroyed his flagship and humiliated his empire. "Bring me Admiral Corvex," he commanded his guards. When the admiral arrived, he looked nervous. The emperor was known for his terrible anger when things went wrong. "Explain to me how a handful of primitive ships destroyed 200 of our vessels," the emperor said, his voice cold and dangerous. Admiral Corvex had been thinking about this question for days. "Your Imperial Majesty, the humans do not fight like any species we have encountered. They seem to prefer death over surrender. They use their own ships as weapons. Our battle doctrine has no response to such tactics. The Emperor's eyes glowed with rage. Then change our doctrine. I want the human species wiped from existence. Deploy the planet killer weapons. Make an example of them that will terrify the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. But while the Emperor planned humanity's destruction, Captain Danny Clark was deep in Imperial space aboard his stealth ship, the Shadow Runner. For months, he had been spying on Zephyrian military bases, gathering intelligence that would shock the galaxy. Danny was a skilled pilot and a brave man, but what he had discovered made him afraid. He had learned the Zephyrian Empire's greatest secret, and it changed everything. "This is Shadow Runner reporting to Earth Command," he whispered into his encrypted communicator. "I've infiltrated the Imperial archives on Sector Bay 7. What I found, you're not going to believe this." On Earth, Dr. Foster received Danny's transmission with growing amazement. According to his intelligence, the Zephyrian Empire was built on a lie. The aliens weren't the advanced civilization they pretended to be. "The Zephyrians are scavengers," Danny reported. "Every piece of advanced technology they have was stolen from species they conquered. Their plasma weapons came from the Altarians. Their shields were invented by the Centauran Republic. Even their ships were designed by the Vegan Collective." Dr. Foster felt her heart racing. What about their own technology? What did the Zephyrians invent? "Almost nothing," Danny replied. "They're good at organizing and bureaucracy, but they're terrible scientists and engineers. They just take the best ideas from conquered civilizations and combine them into their military." This discovery changed everything. If the Empire's technology was just a collection of stolen inventions, then it could be defeated by people who understood how those inventions really worked. Dr. Foster shared this information with her research team, and they immediately began studying the alien equipment with new eyes. Dr. Helen Cross, the physicist who had discovered the quantum reactor weakness, made another breakthrough. "The harmonic frequency that destabilizes their reactors," she announced excitedly. "It's based on mathematical principles discovered by the Melodians, a species the Empire conquered 2,000 years ago. The Melodians were musicians who understood sound better than anyone in the galaxy." "How does that help us?" asked General Brooks. "Because I know how to generate those frequencies," Helen replied. "We can build devices that will broadcast the destabilizing harmonics across entire fleets. Every Zephyrian ship within range will lose power and become helpless." Meanwhile, something even more important was happening across the galaxy. The news of humanity's resistance was inspiring other conquered species to rebel against their imperial masters. On the water world of Aquatica, the dolphin-like Delphinians began attacking Zephyrian patrol ships. They used their natural ability to communicate underwater to coordinate surprise attacks that the aliens never saw coming. On the crystal moon of Vorthak, the crystalline Vorthans started sabotaging Imperial mining operations. Their bodies could mimic the appearance of any mineral, making them perfect spies and saboteurs. In the asteroid belt of the KRYLL system, the insect-like Krillians use their hive mind intelligence to plan coordinated strikes against Imperial supply convoys. Admiral Kate Johnson, now commanding Earth's expanded fleet, began receiving messages from all these rebel groups. They wanted to coordinate their attacks with human operations. "This is unprecedented," she told President Carter. "We're looking at the first galaxy-wide rebellion in Imperial history. Species that have been enslaved for centuries are finally fighting back." The final battle began at dawn on Nexus Prime, the capital world of the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Kate Johnson stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Defiant, watching as the largest fleet in human history dropped out of hyperspace around the Imperial homeworld. But Kate's ships were not alone. Vessels from dozens of species accompanied the human fleet. Crystalline Vorthan ships that glowed like jewels, sleek Delphinian vessels designed for underwater combat, and massive Krillian hive ships buzzing with activity. All ships. This is Admiral Johnson. Kate broadcast the combined fleet. "Today we end 3,000 years of tyranny. Today the galaxy becomes free." Emperor Koldun watched the approaching fleet from his palace and felt his confidence crumble. The rebellion had grown beyond his worst nightmares. Half the galaxy was rising against him, led by the species he had dismissed as primitive. Deploy all remaining forces, he ordered his generals. Every ship, every weapon, everything we have left. The Zephyrian home fleet was still impressive. Nearly 8,000 ships surrounding their capital world. But these ships were crewed by soldiers who had never faced real resistance before. They were used to enemies who surrendered after the first battle. Captain Mike Taylor commanded the human assault group that would lead the attack. His ship, the New Denver, was named after a colony that had first bloodied the Empire's nose. As he approached the enemy formation, he thought about all the friends he had lost in this war. Remember the plan, he told his pilots. We hit them hard and fast, then get out of the way for the secret weapon. The battle began with the humans using their now famous ramming tactics. Ships loaded with explosives crashed through Zephyrian shield walls, creating gaps for other vessels to exploit. The aliens tried to maintain their perfect formations, but chaos spread through their ranks as human ships attacked from unexpected directions. The Delphinians used their knowledge of fluid dynamics to create whirlpool-like attack patterns that confused the rigid Imperial battle computers. The Vorthans mimicked asteroids until they were close enough to strike, then revealed themselves as massive warships. The Krillians coordinated their attacks through hive mind communication that the Empire couldn't intercept. But the real surprise came when Dr. Helen Cross activated her harmonic weapon. The device, mounted on a specially modified human ship, began broadcasting the destabilizing frequency that would shut down Zephyrian quantum reactors. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the Imperial fleet, ships began losing power as their reactors became unstable. Lights went out, weapons stopped firing, and proud Zephyrian warships drifted helplessly through space. It's working, Dr. Foster reported from Earth, watching the battle through long-range sensors. Their entire fleet is going dark. Emperor Cole Dunn felt his throne room shake as explosions rocked his palace. Rebel ground forces had landed on Nexus Prime and were fighting their way toward the Imperial Center. Leading them was Colonel Alex Hunter and a team of human Marines who had volunteered for the most dangerous mission of the war. "Sir, the rebels have broken through the outer defenses," reported one of the Emperor's guards. "They're heading for the throne room." Cole Dunn had spent his life believing he was the most powerful being in the galaxy. Now he was cowering in his own palace, while primitive species tore his empire apart around him. The throne room doors exploded inward, and Alex Hunter stepped through the smoke with his weapon ready. Behind him came soldiers from a dozen different species: humans, Delphinians, Vorthans, Krillians, and others who had suffered under Imperial rule. Emperor Cole Dunn sat alone on his crystal throne, looking smaller and more pathetic than Alex had expected. This was the being who had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years? This frightened bureaucrat who was shaking with fear? "Emperor Cole Dunn," Alex said, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "By the authority of the Galactic Liberation Alliance, I place you under arrest for crimes against every free species in the galaxy." "You cannot do this," the Emperor protested weakly. "I am the rightful ruler of this galaxy. My empire has brought order to chaos." "Your empire brought slavery and death," replied Captain Betty Williams, who had accompanied the assault team. "That ends today." Above the planet, the space battle was ending in complete victory for the rebels. The harmonic weapon had disabled most of the Imperial fleet, and those ships that still had power were surrendering rather than face destruction. Admiral Johnson opened a channel to all surviving Zephyrian commanders. "This is Admiral Kate Johnson of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Your empire is finished. Surrender now and you will be treated with mercy. Continue fighting and you will share your emperor's fate." One by one, the Imperial ships powered down their weapons and transmitted surrender codes. The war was over. In the months that followed, the galaxy began the difficult process of rebuilding. The Galactic Liberation Alliance, led by humans but including representatives from every freed species, worked to establish a new government based on equality and freedom rather than conquest and oppression. Admiral Morrison, the man who had first refused the Empire's ultimatum, was chosen to lead the new Galactic Council. But he surprised everyone by limiting his own power and insisting that every species have an equal voice in the new government. "We didn't fight this war to replace one empire with another," he told the assembled delegates. "We fought so that every species could determine its own destiny." The former Imperial technology was shared freely among all member species of the new alliance. Worlds that had been strip-mined by the Empire were restored. Species that had been enslaved for centuries learned what freedom meant. Dr. Foster established the Galactic Institute of Sciences, where beings from dozens of worlds worked together to push the boundaries of knowledge. The combined intelligence of so many different species led to discoveries that no single civilization could have made alone. On Earth, President Carter watched as alien children played with human children in schools that taught the histories of the liberation. The galaxy had become a place where diversity was celebrated rather than crushed, where different ways of thinking were seen as strengths rather than threats. Captain Danny Clark, the spy who had discovered the Empire's secrets, became an explorer again. But now he was exploring a galaxy where every new world he found was a potential friend rather than another conquest for an evil empire. The Zephyrians themselves were not destroyed or enslaved. Instead, they were given a chance to learn how to live as equals rather than masters. Many of them struggled with this concept at first, but gradually they began to understand that cooperation was better than domination. Emperor Cole Dunn spent his remaining years in comfortable exile on a peaceful world, writing memoirs that no one read. He never understood how his mighty empire had been brought down by species he had considered inferior. He never grasped that freedom was a more powerful force than fear. Years later, when historians studied the Liberation War, they would write about the superior tactics of the rebels, the weakness of Imperial technology, and the strategic mistakes made by Zephyrian commanders. But those who had lived through the war knew the real reason for humanity's victory. It wasn't superior weapons or brilliant strategy that had defeated the Empire. It was a simple human refusal to accept slavery, combined with the courage to help others find their own freedom. The galaxy had been conquered by beings who preferred order over justice, but it had been liberated by beings who believed that liberty was worth any sacrifice. The final monument to the war was built on New Denver, the colony where the first battle had been fought. It was a simple stone wall with the names of everyone who had died fighting for freedom. At the bottom was carved a message in the languages of every species that had joined the rebellion. They told us to surrender or be destroyed. We chose a third option, to fight until we won. The galaxy was free, and it would remain free as long as beings remembered that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the odds. The Empire had not been ready for humans, but more importantly, it had not been ready for the idea that freedom was more powerful than fear. And in the end, that idea had changed everything.